Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Ryan, and all the participants for this session. There are familiar faces. Do you hear me? Can you give me a thumbs up if you hear me and if I'm visible? Okay, I think I'm visible. Uh, so this session is actually entitled Writing Workshops. I actually volunteered for 2 sessions and I preferred the other session better, but this was the one chosen. So, but anyway, I'm very happy to share with you. This is based on my experience as a writing teacher last school year and the first year of online distance learning. But of course, as we know, we have to adapt to the times. So I, I also adapted and went back to the classroom. So first of all, I would like to ask you, are we teaching writers or teaching writing? So you please give me a thumbs up if you say we are teaching writers. Thumbs up if we are teaching writers. Okay, there's no reaction. Okay, Mary Ann says we are teaching writers. Now, so maybe those who did not give a thumbs up, can you give a heart, put a heart, use the heart icon if you say we are teaching writing. We are teaching writing. There's also no reaction. Oh, around 2. Around, yeah, okay. Jervy is here, so okay. Some of you have, okay. Teaching writing according to Mocha. Okay, this is, I listened to a podcast of a famous educator when she says that we are teaching writing and we are not we are teaching writers and not teaching writing. But in my reflection, my reflection and experience actually shows that we are both teaching writers and teaching writing. So, nagtuturo tayo na sa mga manunulat at nagtuturo din tayo ng pagsulat. So there should be an equilibrium. May balanse dapat ang dalawang bagay nito. I hope everyone understands Filipino. Okay. And we know very well that there's creative writing and technical writing. I will not dwell into that. So in my approach and teaching last school year, I taught both creative and technical writing. Now, so we write because we want to get to express ourselves and to get a truth about humanity. Okay. Now, but I want to go into, I want to go to the question of teaching writers. So, according to Reggie Routman, we have to focus on the writer first. And I feel that during the pandemic, that is my primary occupation. I did not have the chance to teach the students I had last year in their 7th grade or 8th grade. I just met them in grade 12 when I taught creative writing and creative nonfiction. And the methods I used during teaching were actually methods which I have learned from experts like Ruth Colham, Gay Supinel, Irene Fountas, and Nancy Atwell. And of course, I have a new idol in writing, Anne Lamott. So I taught them writing territories, I gave them choices, I exercised a lot of quick writes, and I asked them to, I tried to develop their voice in writing. At the same time, when I focused on the context of my students, I believe also that there should be a chance or there should be an opportunity to explicitly teach writing. I have a parent in our school who is a reading expert, and he told me that his son needed explicit writing instruction. I do a lot of explicit reading instruction, but I researched more and I saw that it's also possible to have explicit writing instruction as we do in all skill subjects. So that means modeling writing, using mentor texts. Mentor texts are texts which are similar to the format that you want to have. And then twin texts. Twin texts are similar. For example, a similar text. For example, a narrative about volcano, and then an expository text on volcano. And then, of course, exemplars. These may be students' works or even your work. And then, of course, teaching writing also involves doing writing circles, writing conferences, and publishing e-portfolio. So in my context, in Xavier School, Nuvali, I devised, I went through the curriculum proposed by DepEd and also the curriculum of our school. And I modeled the curriculum also in the context of my students. I only had 16 students in class, so it was easy for me to implement what I will explain to you now. So we say that we are right to taste life twice, in the moment and in retrospect. So in the moment, because ito yung panahon, and then in retrospect, sa isang pagtanaw, for example, in creative nonfiction, we did a lot of biography and nonfiction writing. So there were a lot of reflection on the students' parts. So now, I want to dwell first on how to teach the writers, or how to teach writers. So we have to look at the context of our students, which is it's at the very core of teaching and learning. So most often we say that we devise strategies, or strategies which are intentional actions that lead to desired outcomes. But in the context of the pandemic, we have to amend that definition in calling that a strategy is a deliberate, thoughtful action that contributes to the learner's positive mindset and competency regarding achieving a desired goal or task. So it's not focused only on a desired outcome and an intentional action, but also on a positive mindset and competency in order to achieve a desired goal or task. So the learner is central in the writing class that I had. So if we apply that definition, we focus on the writers first and writing the second. So my first point is looking for, acknowledging, and celebrating the writer's strengths. So engage the person into the page. We have students who might have some problems in writing, and they would say, I'm experiencing the writer's block. So in my first sessions, there were some free writing, some prompts, wherein they only exchange ideas through writing. They do sharing, paired work, and they share in class, just for them to be able to practice their writing and at the same time be able to engage in writing itself. So these activities of engaging in the first weeks of my writing class created a trusting, respectful culture. I'm assistant principal, and I became their teacher. So there was already a block caused by the authority behind my position. So I gave them sustained time for writing every day. So I gave them quick writes every day, and I gave them time to share. And those quick writes became their springboards to bigger compositions which they had to turn in class. Respecting them, having a respectful culture also entails helping them in revisions, redoing, and giving them chances to do better. In fact, I had a very soft deadline. The deadline, because they're only 16, the deadline is the last day of class. But of course, the Google Docs, the document is always there. We consult, we revise, and they email me or they message me about the corrections, both in Schoology and Google Docs. So teaching writers also means encouraging, it's encourage an innovative spirit and more choice. So is the student courageous enough to reveal his true voice and thoughts? So the writing territories, which had become springboards for their work, gave them choice. I did not dictate, as usual, what topic they have to write, or what particular aspect, or even language that they have to write. Because creative writing in the DepEd curriculum is also called malikhaing pagsulat. Because I feel that I'm also well versed in Filipino, I encourage them to write in the language of their choice. So we have to honor also and respect the writer's intentions and efforts. So I organized writing conferences. And for example, after writing their draft, asynchronously or synchronously, I break them into groups, in breakout sessions. I put them in pairs, and they work by pairs, and they give feedback to one another. I go into the groups, and then I also give feedback. So, and I organized after class during consultation period a time to listen to them. And sometimes also I do it even in class while the others are doing their work. I am talking to the students in class or individual students in class. So that's for teaching writers. So it's giving them, it's respecting their person. Yung kilalanin, igalang ang kanilang ang kanilang pagkatao. So listening to them and hearing them. So teaching writing. So maliwanag po hanggang ngayon. So kailangan munang maging sentro ng pagtuturo yung bata, dahil ang K-12 curriculum naman ay context-based. Pero hindi natin pwedeng kalimutan na ang K-12 curriculum is also competency-based. That's why I say that we teach writers and we also teach writing. So teaching writing explicitly for me means teaching the form and modeling writing. For example, when I asked them to write fiction, I also wrote fiction. And as I mentioned, there is modeling. That's why I put their gradual release of responsibility. There's more. First, I show them a mentor text, an exemplar. For example, for fiction, I give them a little bit long, a long example, which is the necklace, which I gave them in 3 languages, in French, English, in the original French, English, and Filipino, so that when we were analyzing the story, I was teaching them so they could identify, and then we analyzed, we identified the elements of fiction, and I modeled the kinds of description used by the author Guy de Maupassant, for example, and of course the proverbial outline of plot development. But when I taught creative nonfiction, I used another method because called soapstone analysis, which is very useful for nonfiction texts. So soapstone analysis involves knowing uh, the tone at the end, no, but also looking at the subject, uh, and then the different aspects. No, I can you can research on that, but audience, purpose, uh, and standards. No, so that's it. So I use that in my teaching with them. Now, but the students in my interaction with them were saying, there's a problem, sir. No. That's why I'm saying teaching writing explicitly. There's a problem, sir, because um, most of our teachers are actually assigning writing compositions for us, but actually not teaching us how to write. So that's the error, not only of teachers of language and reading, but the students are complaining. No? So it has become my concern. So aside from aside from their difficulties in writing, they were also commenting on their teachers. But I will go to that much later. By the way, soapstone means speaker, occasion, audience, purpose, subject, and tone. If your kids are studying for SAT or ACT, this is a very good tool for your students to be able to know the important aspects of a selection. So modeling writing, teaching writing explicitly. When they wrote haikus, I modeled. I also wrote haikus and shared with them. Then, as I mentioned, expose your students to exemplars or great works, reading mentor texts and twin texts. Twin texts to give them more ideas, no? About the content of what they're writing, for example. And then, because it's the pandemic, during the ADL, I realized that I cannot ask them to write long pieces or 25 pages of a short story. So here are some examples of what I have asked them to write. For example, a 6-word memoir. You know? We had some, so I exposed them to 6 words, and then I asked them to expound. You know? So we had literature, and then they had dribble. No, dribble around 150 words. No, Drabble around 500, sudden fiction, and then flash fiction 1,500 words. And then short verses, haiku, quatrains, sonnets, and ballads. But I also gave them the choice to submit in their anthology at the end of my writing class some of the different forms. So I did not dictate everything. But of course, their 6-word memoir became a literature, and then later on has become flash fiction or 6-word story. There's even a 4-word story, you know, so which was attributed to Ernest Hemingway. So that's something you can explore. And then, while writing, we focus on ideas and content first. This is something I learned from Ruth Colham. Ideas would be primarily the concern first. So ideas, don't burst the balloon right away. So give a chance to the students to develop the ideas, and then and then organization, develop sentence fluency, and check on word choice, and then go into conventions or grammar later before they do the presentation. I realized that as I was giving them feedback, they're slowly realizing how their writing works, and they realize themselves their errors, you know, in conventions. So I comment first on ideas and organization because I want to see first the thought and organization. And they know that. No? And towards the end, we need to celebrate milestones in writing. Maybe when we were younger, we experienced that our writings were never celebrated. They were not posted, they were not published. Now we have a lot of means, no? To celebrate. They can make websites or e-portfolio of their works, no? And they can share it with their parents. Because I taught both creative writing and creative nonfiction, I have shared a greater number of works from students. But some students are worried about sharing their works, especially in creative nonfiction. Nonfiction. Okay. Now, this is my last slide. I just believe that I talked about teaching writers, giving them voice, giving them choices in order to develop their voice. But what is important, I think, as a school, I believe that there should be a writing curriculum. Because as I mentioned, my students were telling me, oh, we're doing this in writing class. We are talking about conventions, but our teachers in social science or in CLE, they're not teaching us how to write. They just give us, okay, you write a reflection paper. So after teaching here, I realized that there's really a need for schools to be on the same page in terms of writing. What do we look for? No? If we're teaching social science, are we only looking for ideas and organization? Do we check grammar? So do we check their sentence fluency? Or we can collaborate towards interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary approaches. So, but my main idea, the main text which I used when I taught my students is this book. Miss Galinito, can you please read the title of the book? Can they unmute, Ryan? Can someone read the title of the book? Do you see it?
Hi, sir. It's Bird by Bird.
Okay, so it's Bird by Anne Lamott. I chanced upon this because in order to teach creative writing, I asked the help of an Ateneo English teacher, professor, and a retired teacher there, and she mentioned the book. So in this book by Anne Lamott, she says that we have to do writing every day, and that we have to write bird by bird with every little detail that we see, bird by bird. And don't be afraid of shitty drafts. You know? They're drafts. When I was a younger teacher, I was grading drafts. And I realize now as an administrator and as an older teacher, I was wrong in my approach of grading the drafts or yung pagmamarka ko sa burador. Because isa siyang burador, no? Dahil sa totoo lang, talaga namang huhusgahan tayo dun sa final na papel. No? just like the way we live our lives, no? Huhusgahan naman tayo sa pag-ibig sa dulo na ng ating buhay. So this is one book which I can share with you. If you email me, I can email you the copy of the book. I ask for copyright. What do you call that? Copyright. I ask for copyright. Copyright licenses, or actually, according to a librarian, since I'm going to use it only for educational purposes, it's okay. I can give you a copy of the book. And another discovery for me during this pandemic is the writing revolution. So in this book, it concerns more on focusing on sentences, extending sentences. Right now, I'm helping two students in grade 12, one in the US and one in the Philippines, on making their common application essay. And I realized that sentence variety in compositions is very important. We have to avoid rambling sentences, but this sentence writing is necessary so that the composition or the writing may be fluid. So this is where I got the idea that the great problem is assigning writing but not teaching it. So my dear colleagues, teaching writers, no, it's knowing our students, no, and also teaching writing. No, there should be a balance of that. Thank you very much and have a nice day.
Thank you very much to Sir Frederick. And the floor is now open for maybe one or two questions. You can unmute yourself or send your question over to the chat and I can read it to Sir for you.
If there are no questions, okay. Probably they're still ruminating.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Hello, Sir Frederick. That was a very good talk. Actually, I'm not an English teacher. I'm an art teacher, but I wanted to know how, let's say, I wanted to know what your point of view was in teaching writing as well. Actually, my question of what I still require my students to write and react about artworks and also react to artworks that are created by their classmates. What would you advise me to on how I could encourage my students to be more descriptive or to be, well, I want them to be uninhibited in being very honest in writing about their reaction and expression, yet still remain academic. So I was wondering if you could give me a little advice for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dator. I think what is important is it's already good that you are giving them the venue to sort of publish their writing by reading it in class, maybe by sharing. What is important there is that what I see now is that, is it a reflection you're asking? Maybe you can give them guide questions or points so that they are guided, or you can give them a sample. If they're in the lower grades, what helps is scaffolded writing. But if they're in the upper grades, maybe for the first two sessions or the first two reactions, it would be good that you read them a sample. But when they already have the knack for doing these descriptions of their artworks, it would be good if you can ask them to read them aloud. No? Your question is really very particular to each student, so, and dependent on their artwork. most of our teachers, for example, who are asking children to draw are doing that. They ask the students to make a description. But in your case, what I really want to have actually is, I think part of the writing workshops based on Nancy Atwell and Irene Fountas and Day Supinel is that there should be a writing curriculum. We should all have the same standards. Because if your standards are not the same as the standards of the English teacher or another teacher, we are at a loss in education. I believe in Xavier School Nuvali, in the beginning years, I was giving them, all of them, all teachers from K to 10, a seminar on 6 traits plus 1, which has been our guide and our system of rubric in assessing our writing. So maybe the writing curriculum I was saying is, I was trying to say, explain or to explain and expound actually means having a standard for the whole school. That's my dream. But of course, there's a difference between creative writing and technical writing.
Thank you, Sir Perez. And actually, I'm glad the tips you gave are very useful, because right now we're going to meet to integrate our subjects or collaborate with other teachers, so that, yeah, I think you're right. Very useful that maybe I could get in touch also with the same English teacher who'll be teaching that same class, so that we could set the similar standards. Thank you, sir. That was very helpful.
Because sometimes they say that it's in art. Teacher will not mind my wrong grammar or my disorganized work. So better that, education should not be fragmented. It should be a whole. Okay, sorry, sobrang daldal ko na. But if you email me, I'll send you the book of Anne Lamott. It's also a spiritual read. So
thank you, sir.
Thank
Sir,
you.
what is your email address available? I'd love to email you to ask you more about this.
I'll have it on the chat box.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, unfortunately, we do not have any more time for any more questions. So if you do have questions for Sir Frederick about this session, you may email him, or you may also post your questions and thoughts about this session at gbseal.online/share. Once again, thank you very much to Sir Frederick, and thank you also to our participants for attending this session.
Thank you,
Our next
Eric.
session is entitled The
Thank
Power
you.
of Conversations, and it will begin at 2:50 p.m.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Mr. Perez.
Yan.